Hello, welcome to Stageworthy. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host and producer of this podcast. Stageworthy is Canada's theatre podcast, and on Stageworthy, I talk to theatre people of all kinds, from actors to playwrights to directors to producers, stage managers, and more. Some of whom are household names, and others I really think you should get to know. This week, I'm talking to Dian Marie Bridge, who is the artistic director at Black Theatre Workshop in Montreal. I spoke to Dian because she's directing Kanika Ambrose's Our Place, which runs from November 19th to 30th at Montreal's the Segal Center. So now here's my conversation with Dian Marie Bridge from Black Theatre Workshop. Dian Marie Bridge, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm based in Toronto, so there's a lot that I don't know about theater companies around Canada. And I'm new to Black Theatre Workshop. And so I would love for you to tell me a little bit about Black Theatre Workshop.
It's funny because I am from Toronto, but I heard about Black Theatre Workshop probably, I'd say 25 years ago. And it was when Rachel Van Fossen, who was the then artistic director, brought a group of artists to Toronto to participate in the Rock, Paper, Sisters Festival with Be Current Theatre. And it was like just meeting, cousins. So we were like, and from that point on, I've always just followed the company. So BTW is 55 years old this year. We're celebrating our 55th anniversary, which is huge. It's stellar in terms of not only the oldest Black and ethnocultural theater company, but just one of the older theater companies in general in Canada. And we started out through the Trinidad and Tobago Community Association, and then folks from that community started to just bring their artistic practices from home and decided to do them here. And so it turned into a professional theater company and has been really the root of the Black English theater community here in Montreal.
That's awesome. You mentioned becoming aware of the company. How did you start your journey towards artistic directorship?
I have been a theater kid since I was like super small. My mom used to tell us stories all the time. On my mother's side, we have quite an artistic family. So I have uncles who are musicians and people who write and all of that. And with theater, it was kind of just like a given. It kind of, it is an art form that just brings together all of the practices, all of the music, all of the writing, all of that. In terms of artistic direction, like, I think that was just kind of one of those things that you aim for when you don't really know what the job is. And then when you get older, you're like, no, I can be of service to this community. And so that's where I am right now. Is I have a very clear understanding that I'm of service to a particular community here in Montreal, but also be able to bring international networks to this community. That's really why I'm here.
Now, this season, BTW's season this year, consists of a couple of shows. By the time this airs, the first show will have been over. But I want to take some time to talk about Our Place, which you are directing. So what can you tell me about that play?
So this is a play by Kanika Ambrose. And when she was talking about this piece, she told me that she was in a hair salon and overhearing a story about this crazy immigration process that somebody had to go through, and started to think about the obstacles that people face around just trying to immigrate to a country legally, and how it's almost forces people to be in this relationship with deviancy or criminality when they might not necessarily want to do that. People want to immigrate. People want to better themselves and better their lives, but sometimes these opportunities come and it makes it seem easy. You just find somebody and marry them, and the consequences be what they may. But she wrote this really amazing piece about people struggling with just the idea of trying to find love and balance love with this need as well. And what's really lovely about it, she said it in Scarborough, and I don't know, folks know that strip of Kingston Road before it turns into Highway 2. Yeah, in the east of Scarborough. And I think George Walker put all his suburban motel plays there.
Yes.
So it's that same strip, but like with a Caribbean angle. And it's, Scarborough 86 bus passes right through there going to the zoo. And so for me, growing up in Pickering, I feel like a real affection for that area. And the language that is used in the play is this pan-Caribbean made-up Creole / patois that is kind of a mix of Guyanese and Trinidadian, a little bit of Jamaican and some Haitian. And here in Montreal, because most of the Black population is Haitian or Afro-Caribbean, there is an opportunity for us to really lean into that. So here's a play that was written in English Canada, but gets to really highlight the voices that are here. And we're just playing with that idea of this story being universal. Yeah. And using this language to bring people in and make it comfortable for them at the same time as telling a story that can happen to anyone.
It's interesting that, I mean, here you are in a city that's known for its bilingualism. It on some levels, it's the French and, some English, but also this patois, this other language that's common and spoken in the Black community. What does this third language mean to the community that you serve?
Yeah. So there is the conversation around French and the official French language. And it's one of the biggest things that people are really focused on here. And then in my perspective, whether it's French or English, both of those are languages that we've had to learn and that they're colonial languages. So when you get to actually hear the language that you use, that you're born with, that's mix of everything, there's something that just touches on a deeper level where the way you express yourself and the unwritten and almost telepathic way you communicate with each other, just like a pointing with the lips, that sort of thing. All of those things are as much language as saying, I need this, and so being able to play with that is really, really a lovely opportunity. And also, I've always said this just about languages. If you stifle language and you force people to stick to a specific kind of learning and language doesn't grow, it doesn't intake, it doesn't get, it becomes a dead language. And so what happens when people are in a space together where they're learning how to communicate and bringing in elements and making this thing happen, this thing move, this thing work for them, is that the language itself gets richer. And talking to younger people here in Montreal, you hear that the French that's spoken by the younger generation is this crazy mix of bits of Creole, Haitian Creole, and then bits of Arabic, and then little specklings of English here and there, and a lot of curse words. And it's becoming a thing onto its own. And I personally, I think that's amazing. But you hear it in Toronto too. Like you hear the Toronto slang as well, which is like this mix up of Jamaican patois and English and some Swahili words. And so I've heard some in there. Yeah, it's quite interesting the way language evolves and tells the story of who's been interacting with who.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about how in a place like Montreal, mixing in the French and English words and Arabic words and all of these things really kind of speaks to the multiculturalism of Montreal, which sometimes doesn't get to be front and center.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like people in the rest of Canada look at Montreal as a destination city. Oh, a little bit of Europe that sort of thing. But it is a really vibrant city, and it has it's on par with any other major city, I think, in terms of its entertainment and in terms of its community building, and it knows who it is. Like the city knows itself, right? Yeah.
And that's a unique thing in Canada, because not every city in Canada can say that they know who they are.
Yeah.
And, but Montreal absolutely does. And I've always enjoyed every time I go there, just discovering something new.
Absolutely. I'm still learning the city. I've been here for about 3 years, and it's like, I've been to the top of the mountain and I've been to through my neighborhood, but there are entire sections that I haven't explored yet.
There's just too much. You can't, in a city when you're working, you really can't explore everything. It takes decades to really get to know a city. I'm curious about how this play, Our Place, speaks to BTW's theme this year of Talawa.
Yeah, Talawa. So the idea, Talawa is this phrase in the Jamaican culture, we lickle but with Talawa. And it's something that could be like branded across any t-shirt. The idea is that we're small, but we're mighty. And little things that we do, little choices that we make, that resiliency to keep pushing and keep going and keep trying is what is the secret ingredient for success, to be honest. And like when I think about the work that people do under the table, like the extra work, people who are on the, the poorest side of the spectrum tend to be the people who work the longest and the hardest. And that speaks to the characters in this play as well. They've been trying multiple times to get and stay in the country, and they're just very resilient people, and they will do what they need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this play is it's premiered.
No. So it was premiered, I think, either just before the pandemic or just out of the pandemic in Toronto. And I believe it was at Theatre Press Marais. And I believe it garnered a bunch of door nominations and a few awards. It was a really amazing production that I was sad that I couldn't see. And so when I got to, be able to program it, we actually programmed it as a reading during our Club Z festival in 2023. And the entire audience was like completely enthralled. They were just, screaming, "Don't do it, girl, don't do it." Or, "Oh, he said that's like just audible. And it was like, it was a complete shock to me, but it was amazing. And the actors loved it. And right after were asking me, "Are you programming this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this?" And it was like, "Oh, I guess I'm doing this play." And Kanika has been fantastic. She's really excited about it getting a second show, a second production, which is also rare for Canadian work.
That's one of the things I talk about all the time is how rare it is to have like a work that gets to have a premiere and then another life after that premiere.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to see that happening.
Yeah.
Especially at BTW.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like, it's lots of fun because Kanika is a person I've known since she was in the Paprika youth group, the Paprika. Yeah. And yeah, it's amazing watching her.
Now, you mentioned the Club Z Playwrights Festival, so we might as well talk about that. Tell me about that festival.
Oh, so back in 2000 and 2003, Janet Sears had put together the Afro-Canadian Playwrights Festival with the support of CanStage and the University of Toronto. And that was a international gathering of Black writers and scholars and artists. And I was the office coordinator, office assistant, something like that. It was one of my first jobs in Toronto. And I just remember meeting everybody that I know in theater at that festival. And then somewhere around 2006 was the last one. And I've always wondered like what we could do to bring it back. But, with one person kind of organizing it, I understand why it went away. And then when I find in the last couple of years with the opportunity to come to BTW, I wanted to revive something that was not exactly like the Afro-Canadian Playwrights Festival because that was very leaned into academia and much more performance showcase based, which was a bigger budget than I knew we had. So I wanted to still have the gathering of people and the networking, but at the same time, give professional development classes. So like translation workshops and workshops about getting published and workshops about transitioning from writing into TV and film, that sort of thing, mainly to really foster the writers who are here in Montreal. Because when you look at the national canon, the few writers that do come out of this region either are Quebecois and Francophone, but the national Black voice tends to still be centralized in either Toronto or comes from the UK or comes from the US. Those are still the stories that are driving us, which is, it's fine, universal stories, but I'm really curious about this community that is polyglottal and has international connections that are not Britain, it's other places, and just have a different perspective about what the world is. And when you think about the Haitian experience versus the rest of the Caribbean, the Haitian experience were like the first ones to emancipate themselves, and the fire that's in that kind of lived experience is really something that I want to encourage.
Yeah, for sure. The Haitian aspect is always so fascinating to me because, like you said, it's the first of the colonies that had a revolt and threw off and kicked out the oppressors and the colonizers, but also were then punished for that financially severely for so
are
long.
still being punished, are still
Yeah,
paying
yeah.
reparations to France to this day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an incredible thing that I don't think that people outside of the community think about or know about, which is really quite, because when I found out about that, I was floored
Yeah.
that this is something that's still happening to this country.
Yeah. Yeah. And people can start to understand why the country is so poor, or why resources are mined and taken out of the country at the rate they are. I remember seeing a map, an aerial map of the actual border between Dominican Republic and Haiti, and it's a literal line, a deforestation line, because all the resources are being taken out of Haiti. And when those tropical storms come, why is the devastation so much worse on that side? Because the infrastructure is not there to support. So yeah, that as a lived experience, and not through, being communicated through your DNA and your understanding of the world, your perspective of the world, changes the way you think. And I want to hear what that story is.
And with the diaspora that is in Montreal, it sounds, every diaspora is unique. But Toronto, like you were saying, it has sort of like a particular voice in the Black community, and so there's like a different voice in the Montreal Black community. So in terms of the plays that you've programmed at Club Z, what do you look for in those plays?
So it's a mix. So some of them are plays that I want to test out because I'm thinking of programming them. Some of them are those large plays that won awards, but they have 12 people in them, and I cannot produce that ever. But I can do a reading, right? And then we have a couple of programs that allow for new voices and new work to be just tested. So there is a salon series that we do where we invite people to submit, and they get to read 20 minutes and then get feedback from the audience, and, or in the form of questions. And we actually formalize the way that people get that feedback. And then there is the closing night. We do what we call Sits Pub. So it's a music infused cabaret where we're asking people to showcase new pieces or pieces that are influenced by music in some way, in order to expand our idea of what writing is and what playwriting is and what theater is. And those are always fun. We had somebody who I totally think it was like a Buffon stand-up comedy act, but I don't know to this day. And she just stood there and tried to tune the guitar and play and talk, and it was super awkward. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And comedians, you've had comedians come up and do pieces. Yeah, musical acts, like straight up R&B, like storytelling, singing, that sort of thing. Yeah, so there's a lot of open calls. We ask the community to tell us what they're working on, and then the actual formalized readings are more considered with regards to giving folks exposure and low stakes platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you make decisions about not just what you're programming for, like the Playwrights Festival, but in general, how do you make decisions about what you're programming?
I kind of look at who I follow people, I look at what they're doing. I am always open to suggestions. People have sent me stuff, and I have a big document, big spreadsheet that I just type in. I have a lot of meetings with writers. When we do our annual auditions, I actually open them up to writers and directors and production folks as well, not just actors, to just give them a 15-minute slot to just chat. From just intaking all that information, and really just try to see what jazzes me, and if there are connections to the rest of the year, right? So Kanika's play, it's been 2-3 years that I've been thinking about it. And the plays that I'm looking at for the future are, some of them are because another artistic director approached me and said, "We really like this writer. Would you consider partnering?" Yes. Or things that I'd been, living with for like a decade that I would love to see another remount of that. Yeah. So it's kind of all over the place. I really just go with when things say yes, like what says yes and what's moving.
I would love to talk about the theater scene in Montreal. I know, I'm sure, only the surface. I know that there's a lot of French theater, which I don't get to see because I am unfortunately not bilingual. There, everybody knows Centaur. I know mainline theater, which just lost its space.
Yeah.
But I don't, there's obviously a lot that I don't know. Tell me a little bit about the theater scene in Montreal.
Yeah. So coming from Toronto as a newbie too, I'm still finding little pockets of it, but the community here is super tight knit, really supports each other in a way that I think is so beautiful because we're fighting just to kind of get representation. And so when we can bond together, we do. We have Geordie Theatre out here, which is a national TYA company. Imago, which is a feminist theatre company. We have Infinite Theatre, which is a company that does a lot of really innovative Montreal stories, but like really amazing staging and very creative work. And they also have a publishing arm to their company as well. They're I can't go through the whole list, but there's some really cool partnerships that happen as well. There are companies that do works in translation from French into English or English into French. There's the same. In the spring, when we all do our season launches, instead of doing them individually, we actually come together and hold a big press conference. And each company gets, they say 1 minute and 30 seconds, or like 3 minutes or whatever, but like, yeah. But it actually is such a wonderful event for community to actually come out too as well. So actors will come out and the designers will come out and see the presentations of all the companies, and the media because the media is so sparse here in Montreal, that actually is a really lovely event for them to come to and interview multiple people and get the word out about the English theater scene in Montreal. So it's when we bind together, we're stronger. Yeah, for sure.
I really love the idea of doing those launches together because I think that theaters are stronger, especially in these post-pandemic years, as funding is less and we're losing venues in Toronto. We're like losing venues. You're losing venues in Montreal all the time. Bringing companies together and sharing the stage in those ways is so powerful. Years ago, when I was at the Toronto Fringe, the solo performer Cameron Moore had a workshop, and the thing that she said that always stuck with me was that there's audience enough for everyone. And I think that is something that all of our theaters across Canada would do well to just sort of absorb, because when we share audiences, we are stronger.
Absolutely. And I don't know how to do that. Like, I know that there have been projects in the past where they've tried to bring together 5 companies. I think there was a group of 7 at one point, and it's been done in Toronto and out in Calgary where they share resources. Something always falls through. I don't know what it is, but I think it's a lovely idea to share, a building. There's a group in Vancouver right now that's not a group, but a building in Vancouver. I'm trying to remember the name of the building, but there's at least 3 theater companies in there. And then they have a garage shop space and a performance space that they all take turns renting, which, I mean, for smaller companies, it's fantastic. You don't have the overhead of of entire building that you have to take care of all by yourself, and you have access to a space. And one of the worst things that happened in the pandemic was all the spaces that just got sold, and converted, or people got kicked out or moved around. And there are so many old buildings here in Montreal. It's like heartbreaking when you see some of those places that could be amazing theaters, but
yeah.
All right.
You were nodding as I talked about venues closing. Is there a venue crisis in Montreal?
Huge venue crisis. The Segal Center and the Center are kind of our 2 main go-tos. So with everybody kind of clamoring to get in there, and then both of the companies went through major renovations last season, it was very hard. We at BTW actually canceled the show because we couldn't find a venue, and we pushed it to the next year. So it's interesting. But one of the things that did come out of it was, for a time, we had a 2-hander of Andrea Scott and Nick Green's Every Day She Rose, and we were trying to find a venue. We ended up finding a rehearsal space for Théâtre Espace Libre. So we used their rehearsal hall, which they had never done a performance in there before. Like, they have used it as an actual rehearsal hall, but we had seats in there, and this really tiny, I called it my little jewel box show, because it was super compact set. We used a lot of circular motion and had bubbles over, like these big balloons over the top that were like these emoji bubbles. And it looked like you opened up a little jewelry box. It was gorgeous. And from that point on, like they started using the show as a venue for those micro shows, those smaller shows. So we just saw a show by Joe, Jack, and John, and it was Trou Noir, I think, Black Hole, which was a solo show about a man who was living with schizophrenia and as a disabled Black man in the city. Yeah, so it was really fantastic that the space is, we're finding resources, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. With a venue crisis
Mhm.
comes, not only do theaters have to work together to produce and things like
Yeah.
that, but artists have to come together. And so mentorship becomes very important.
Oh, yeah.
And I know BTW has an artist mentor program. How long has that been going on, and how is that program going?
Yeah, that is super exciting for us because I feel like it is one of those programs that actually responds to what's happening in the community. So it started 13 years ago, and the idea was to give BIPOC, Black, and other artists access to the professional community. So teaching them how to participate in a professional way. So this is how you do your resume. This is how you do your headshot. This is how you do your taxes, all that stuff. And it was run for a number of years with the focus kind of on actors and performers and then some other folks. And it was about giving them a professional experience. So learning how to read a contract properly and sign your contract, and then through the process of developing an actual show together. But then with COVID, what happened was we saw a whole bunch of production folks leave, right? Stage managers were gone. TDs were leaving by the boatload. They're getting corporate gigs. I get it. I understand it. But what the trickle down was that the performers and the artists didn't have the production knowledge or language in order to actually push their projects forward. So we actually just change the program to respond to that. So it's not creating producers, it's creating artists who understand production literacy so that they can either do it themselves or they know who to hire or they know what they're missing. And because for me, I went into producing because I couldn't get work, but at this, like I was having a hard time. So I could put together a spreadsheet, and I knew what clauses in the CTA and the ITA to use. And those will help me push my own stuff forward. And you just feel less at the mercy of people, right? You feel like you're not always waiting for somebody to say yes to you. You can say your own yes. So that's how the program has switched so far.
I think that is a really smart and important part of mentorship, because I think that's like a missing piece to the way that people learn about theater and indie theater. A lot of times those things get forgotten.
Yeah. And when you think about it, it's like these are some folks who don't necessarily have access to post-secondary education, right? Who are kind of doing it because they love it. And the mentorship aspect. So that's like the actual program itself runs weekly. They meet. It's a peer-to-peer mentorship, because when you really think about it, you kind of rise together as a cohort. And the folks who are like beside you could be artistic directors in like 10 years, right? That sort of thing. But then in addition to that, they get a one-on-one mentorship with an artistic professional in the community who's actually doing the thing that they want to do. So it's not just, here's a writer to teach you about playwriting. It's, you're doing solo shows and they are ethnoculturally specific. So we're going to connect you to be young, or we're going to connect you to somebody who's doing the thing that you want to do. And they can just tell you. So, and it's not about them being, a dramaturg or them being a teacher in that traditional sense. It's more like, hey man, watch out for this. Hey, I did this. Or it's about relationship building. And our mentors have been immensely generous with their time and their information and their access. We just had two cohort members who were offered free passes to the Caminos Festival through Bea Paisano. And so we sent them to Toronto, and then they spent a week in Toronto with meeting peers from all over the world, meeting their mentor in person, and just having like this experience, which being Montreal based, they wouldn't normally have. And we've been really fortunate to also, through COVID, we extended the program so it was national. and also bilingual. So people who are francophone have joined, and we connect them to francophone artists and people. We have folks in Newfoundland all the way to Victoria, I think is the, yeah. So we have people from all over, up north, everywhere. And we try and accommodate as best as we can in terms of their mentorship asks and their professional development asks.
Wow. What doesn't Black Theater Workshop do?
Well, my team is like amazing. So people are really punching above their weight. And we had to have that be a dedicated position in the company. That the manager for the Artist Mentor program is Keith Fernandez, who himself is also an artist who is an actor and a director and a drag queen, and like has like this really robust artistic practice in addition to his administrative practice. So he and I would chat about the things that we would have loved as emerging artists or younger artists. And it's also not just limited to emerging artists. It's for people who are mid-career as well, who are transitioning or who want to deepen. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
As somebody who is in an arts administration role, as an artistic director,
Mm-hmm.
how are you, because you come from a creative background in theater. How are you balancing, and how do you balancing that artistic leadership with creation?
Yeah, it's hard. I feel like I do the bulk of it when I'm between jobs, believe it or not. Yeah. Or I have to actually physically carve out time. Say, don't talk to me for this week, or this is my vacation, leave me alone, I'm directing, that sort of thing. But it's super hard. And I know other people do it. I wish I knew their secret. It sometimes I think it's my brain, the way my brain organizes things, but I feel like there's no end to the service that you like. The job demands so much, and I have to actually prioritize. I have to actually, yeah. So not doing well.
When a company serves a community, and I've spoken to a few people who are artistic directors of theater companies that serve communities, it becomes more than what it is if you're the artistic director at a factory or something like that. It is more outreach, more community, more work on the go. And because it's serving a community, that community has a lot of asks and needs to be served. Yeah.
Yeah, because this organization particularly came out of a community organization. There are people, good and bad, but there are people who believe that this is their company. It is. This is the company of Montreal's English Black theater community, not just theater. So we will have folks who have been, who knew the previous artistic director, Quincy Onwer, knew Quincy when he was a child, who are constantly at all of our events and are diehard, So there's that aspect to it. But then there's also in the programming and the curation of the programming. I'm also very conscious of who's going to be coming and supporting the work, and being in that conversation with them. Like, how do I introduce new writers or new topics or things that might not necessarily be within their comfort zone? How do I move slightly away from the Caribbean stories and like include more African stories, or just include like different understandings of what Black is? So it's a constant dialogue. And I do go to events. I'm going to an event tomorrow where I'm actually in community and have that conversation. Our TYA show, which will have been passed by the time this airs, but what we have done for the community is to also, outside of this school tour, we actually do a community day, and we're actually putting that in the Union United Church Hall. So the church community comes to that one and sees it as well. And it's just an opportunity for them to understand that this is their company, even though we have national aspirations.
Yeah. I do want to mention, because even though that show will have passed by the time this airs, that show is written by Donna Michelle St. Bernard, an incredible playwright who is, just an incredible playwright, full stop. And how did that show come to you?
So Dian had been in conversation with Black Theater Workshop even before I got here. And Dian is one of those writers who I've known for many, many years. And the 54ology project, this all-encompassing like life project that's being done, BTW commissioned 2 of them, actually. So in 2023, we did Diggers, which was a play about frontline workers and saving a town from like this crazy flood and wall. And then this was the next play in the cycle. And it was a TYA show. So for me, that's lovely because it's so hard to find theater for young audience that is specific to the Black community. And so that was in development with Black Theatre Workshop for, I think, at least 3 or 4 years. And it's really lovely to be a part of that legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask a bit of a difficult question. And I'm curious about the style of theater that Black artists feel they can make. Is there an embargo that you feel on the style of theater?
I don't think so. But I wonder about the question about will it get produced?
Of course, yeah.
And people writing for community or for a theater company or for a style. I've seen like really amazing, challenging experimental work by Black artists, but I think it really goes hand in hand with who's producing what work and who wants what stories, right? And when you think about Obsidian, The Current, Black Theatre Workshop, and I think there's another collective out west, but I can't remember their name. But that's like, there's 4 companies. And we do 2 shows a year, and one is a TYA show. So in terms of our bottom line, we have to balance between making sure we get bums and seats, but at the same time pushing the narrative forward and engaging as many people as possible. So it really is a community conversation about what kind of conversations do we want to have with people, versus having the liberty to do experimental work. Even though we want to start pushing in that direction through the Playwrights Festival, that's one of the directions that we're going, and being able to support artists who are doing that work is also a direction we're going in. But it's a constant balance. And I think about what a luxury it is to be able to just program what you like.
Yeah.
Like in Canada, I don't know of any company that is like just free to do that. I think there's always a balance of, who we're serving. Even like the large institutions are kind of always driven by their mandate and trying to balance who they're serving.
Well, I mean, This is, I think, that balancing act, because not only are they balancing their mandate, whatever that might be, but also trying to find that balance between, say, their subscribers who they have, and the subscribers who may want one thing, and maybe what they might want to do to try to bring in a new audience, which it can be at odds with what the subscribers want.
Yes. Yeah. And the subscribers, if you push them in the wrong direction, then you might lose them.
You were mentioning the limitations that a playwright might put on themselves. And I know that a lot of playwrights who are writing in general will sort of like think about, everybody writes that play with like 15 characters at the beginning of their playwriting career, and then they discover that nobody's going to program
No
that.
one can afford it.
Nobody can afford to do that. So that you start putting limitations. What kind of limitations do playwrights that are coming to you or that other Black theater companies are putting on their work?
I think it's actually shifting. So I remember probably 15 years ago, I was working at, oh my word, that's a really long time ago. And it's actually more than that. About 20 years ago, I was working at Playwrights Guild of Canada, right? And we have PGC has a connection to the Playwrights Canada Press. And I approached the then publisher to say I wanted to do an anthology of Black writers in Canada. And the submissions that we got, I actually put the project on hold because I was just so overwhelmed with just the stories were always about explaining your Blackness to the other, or about difficulty in the trauma and that sort of thing. And I think people were writing that to not only get it off their chest and like really expose how they feel, but also that was kind of the demand at the time, right? And then it started changing, started shifting, and very deliberately with people like Donna Michelle, with people like Andrew Scott, to be young. All those people started getting produced or self-producing and just talking about the world as they see it and how they live it. And it's not always in response to the need for somebody else to validate you. And so what started happening was starting to see stories of love stories, like breakups or like just human stories, right? And I'm thinking people are still kind of struggling with what needs to be, what they want to talk about and what they think the audience wants or the artistic director wants. I just want us to get to a place where we're just writing what we want to write, and a lot of it, and then getting to see way more stuff and getting to pick and choose, in terms of like the artists you want to support. Even if you don't produce their work, how can you support artists in another way? And here in Montreal too, I'm finding that there are a lot of francophone artists, Black francophone artists, who are actually writing in English because there's more opportunity in English. Like Jenny Laguerre is one. She's Toronto based, but francophone from Ottawa with a Haitian background and writes primarily in English. And we've done a couple of her plays at this point. But I'm also encouraging her, like, write in French, like you're much freer in French. And then maybe BTW can do a translation of it, and do it in rep in both languages or offer subtitles or something like that. But I feel like people are starting to awaken to different stories and like what they want to say and how they want to express. And it's also just like time of life too, like what you go through, what you understand at 20 versus what you understand at 50. So different, right?
There's an ongoing conversation that comes up every so often in Toronto with some audiences or some people who seem to want their theater from cultures that are not of the British persuasion to explain what they're about. And yet I've never sat in an audience and not been able to follow a play. I don't need it spoon-fed. I think that if you trust an audience, that they can come with you because the story is good, because the characters are great.
Yeah.
But again, we still have some people who are demanding explanations where they're not necessary.
Yeah. And quite often those are not even, when you really think about it, it's not about explaining what they don't understand. It's that they're not there. They don't see themselves.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to take a little bit of a shift in the time that we have left. And I want to talk a little bit about you and your theater journey. You mentioned growing up as a Black theater kid, and I want to hear about how you got interested in theater because you came from an artistic family. But how did the interest in theater translate into a theater career?
I played King David in Hartford. It Isn't Hot in the Furnace, and my sister played King Nebuchadnezzar. And so, yeah, it was this, probably written in the 60s or something, this really jazz-infused musical. It isn't hot. Ooh, you in the furnace, man. That sort of thing. And I was the kid who I just was so excited to be there, and I took it seriously, even though it was like after school and after church on Sundays. And at one point, I remember we were gathered and all the other girls were chatting, and I got upset with the group and I said, "Wait, this is serious. We're opening next week," or something like that. And the teenagers who were leading us, I now know that they were teenagers, but at that time they seemed so grown. They said that they really appreciated that, got me a fluorescent pink sweatshirt as a thank you, and told me I was a director. And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." So from that point on, I think I was in grade 4. I was just always in something in theater. If I wasn't in, theater sports or directing or writing the plays, my grade 12 English special project was I wrote a play. I wrote a comedy, a farce, and I handed that in for my creative writing class. And, I was the kid who got kicked out by the janitors because we were in the theater or either in the theater or in the art room. One of those two. Yeah. And just, I had a really good group of friends who were always into theater in high school. Sears Drama Festival was a big part of it. I went to the University of Minnesota in my second year as an exchange student and just saw a bunch of stuff. I think I saw 40 shows that year as a student, and it just cemented everything. And teachers who believed in me, would hold me and be like, "Yeah, you're a director. You need to work on that, but you're good at that sort of thing." And just a bunch of yeses, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeses are really important. And I think that sometimes when people leave theater school and they've been through this theater school, they don't know that people want to give them yeses, that like you can like send an email or a message to that playwright that you want to, whose brain you want to pick, and chances are if they're available they'll say yes.
Yeah, I was always amazed at how generous like folks are, and I always find it so wild when people are like, like the Dian Marie Bridge, and I'm like, oh sweetheart, it's like just time. You'll be here in 5 years. It's just resiliency. It's just sticking around, to be honest.
I'm curious about your move from Toronto to Montreal. Was there like a culture shock heading into from Toronto to Montreal? What was that transition like?
I have been in love with this city for a very long time. I had a very romantic relationship with this city. You know, when I was younger in my 20s, sometimes I would just hop on a bus and couch surf and I just walk, you know, just I'm going down to the river, I'm going to this park. And then like the dance, the night scene, that all that. Now that I'm older, I see it differently. Like the romance is gone a little bit. And I realize though that people live with culture differently here. Like it's part of their citizenship, you know, it's like ingrained in how they live their lives. People know what the French theater companies are. They go to dance. The festivals here are like amazing. I saw Blue Rodeo here for free, you know, during the Jazz Fest. I saw so many like amazing performances. And Toronto has some stuff, but it's not the same. Like this city soaks in so much culture.
That I have an envy of that aspect of Montreal, how the arts are very much baked into the people who are in Montreal. And you know, in English Canada, we tend to be like the arts are there if people think about them at all.
Yeah.
Whereas I know in Quebec, they're like, no, don't you dare. Like I remember hearing about people like out in the streets when if the arts funding was being cut, like just
Yep.
like really, really passionate about the arts. I envy that.
Yeah, I don't know why Toronto doesn't see that. Like, I remember when Nuit Blanche first started in Toronto, it was this amazing opportunity to like spend all night. International artists were involved. Yoko Ono did a project, and then it turned into this kind of street frat party at one point. It was super disappointing. I didn't get a chance to see this year's, but the new curator, Laura Nani, who I've known for years. I'm super excited at the opportunity for her to and really shine. But the way that the arts are seen in Toronto feels like a luxury, or it feels like something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And here it's like you're expected to know who the artists are. You're expected to know what's going on, what conversations are being had, who the dancers are. You know, they have this amazing, huge, like 5-room exhibit of Kent Mumpin at the Beaux-Arts right now. And like, I don't know when the last time I went to the AGO or the ROM was where it didn't feel like it was like a spectacle, you know, like I went to see, I think it was Frida Kahlo, and I couldn't get 5 feet within like 5 feet of the work because it was just jam packed with people. And maybe what I'm saying is actually counter to the point, but there was just something about it being like the thing to do as opposed to actually living with the art.
That's actually the distinction, because when the AGO has an event like the Frida Kahlo or the Infinity Rooms by Eric Sama, it's like that becomes like I got my picture, that becomes a thing. People are not living in it; they're there for the spectacle. They're there for their Insta pic, and it doesn't have as much meaning to them. They're not living with it, which is too bad. It's a thing we're missing here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Monkman exhibit, I think just opened, and it's here for, I think goes till March, right? So months. You have months of opportunity. I don't know how long the AGO has the exhibits open, but I'm going on memory from before, but I just remember feeling like I had been robbed an opportunity, you know?
In a way you had, because you didn't get to experience that art You didn't get to sit with it. You were in there being jostled by a crowd of people who were getting their picture taken with it, or all that sort of thing. And you're missing your opportunity to sit with it and to have your moment with the art.
Have your dialogue. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Just as we close, I'm curious, as you are working on, you directing Our Place, what are you most looking forward to about this piece and having an audience see it?
the fun of it. We've read it. It's a fun piece to read. I want to play with, because when you read it, there's a lot of laughs, but I want to find those moments of duality within each character. Like, when do we see that side of them that is not so likable, or when do we see that side of them that's really vulnerable? How to fill out these comical characters, that these characters that read as comical right now and could read as stereotypical. How do we make them full human beings who are making choices with, limited resources, and just bringing life to the play, like real life struggles, real decisions. Yeah.
Beautiful. Diane, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate that. Give me a second, and in just a moment, I will tell you who my guest is next week. But first, let's do a little housekeeping. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you like this episode, leave a comment so that I know that you were here. And also, make sure that you subscribe and click that bell icon so that every time I release a new episode, you'll get notified. And if you're listening to the audio version and you are not already, go to your favorite podcast app, search for Stageworthy, and hit the follow button. That way, every time I release a new episode, it will get downloaded directly to your device. I need to talk, of course, about my Patreon, and I could not do this show without the patrons who've chosen to back me on Patreon. Putting out a podcast for free still has costs involved. There's costs for website hosting, for hosting the audio files and distribution to the various platforms. There's editing software. There's image creation software, because I create an image for every episode. And so these are all costs that I have to pay for. My patrons are helping me to do that. Currently, we're covering the costs, and we're not covering anything having to do with my time, which includes scheduling and doing the interviews and editing all the podcasts. If you would like to help do that, if you want to be part of the making of this show, go to patreon.com/stageworthy and become a patron. Patrons get early access to episodes. There are discussions about issues that might be coming up. And also, the more people who join, the more we're able to offer. So I would love to have you as a partner in making this podcast. So please go to patreon.com/stageworthy and join the Patreon. Now, next week, my guest is Fiona Sauter from Bad Hats Theatre, who are producing, in partnership with Salt Pepper, their production of Narnia this year. Bad Hats has been doing shows during the holidays at Salt Pepper for many years now, and their shows are whimsical and wonderful. And I can't wait for you to hear the conversation with Fiona Sauter next week on Stageworthy.